Jambo, hello, na habari gani, and how are you? My name is Simon Kariuki, and I take this opportunity to say Karibu, welcome to Swahili language lessons. I'd like you to picture yourself in this huge city. You are in the middle of the city, you know no one, you don't understand the language they speak, you don't understand the road, the signs in that particular land, but you need to move from point A to point B. But you can't because you don't understand anything. And then a guide comes and he knows exactly what you need to move from point A to point B. Allow me to liken myself to that guide. You probably want to learn Swahili, but you don't know where to start from, what to do. Allow me to be your guide as we begin on this beautiful, amazing Swahili safari. And it will be my joy to take you from beginner all the way to mastering the Swahili language. All right? But before we get started, let's look at a few interesting facts about the Swahili language. Number one, Swahili is spoken by over 200 million people in East and Central Africa. We are talking about Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, the northern parts of Mozambique and Zambia, the southern parts of Somalia. Swahili is also spoken in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And by the way, Swahili is also being taught elsewhere in Africa, in South Africa, in Botswana, in South Sudan, in Ethiopia. There are people learning the Swahili language. So it is a language that is growing far and wide. Interesting fact number two, Swahili belongs to a group of African languages known as the Bantu languages. Okay, there are over 600 Bantu languages in Africa south of the Sahara, all the way from Cameroon to East Africa in Kenya down to South Africa. A few notable Bantu languages are Zulu, which is spoken in South Africa, Bemba, spoken in Zambia, Shona, spoken in Zimbabwe, Luganda, spoken in Uganda, Chaga, spoken in Tanzania, Lingala, spoken in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Chichewa in Malawi, and in Kenya we've got Bantu languages such as Kikuyu, Luya, and Kamba. All these are Bantu languages, and Bantu languages are somewhat related in terms of structure and basic vocabulary. We shall have a look at that later. Another interesting fact about Swahili, fact number three, is that I know you will love this one. You will love this one. Swahili is a phonetic language. What do I mean by that? How you see a word written, that's how you pronounce it. And how words are pronounced in Swahili, that's how they are written down. So that makes Swahili super easy to learn. By the way, when we have our pronunciation lesson, I'm very sure that you will be able to read a Swahili book. All right, that's how easy the Swahili pronunciation is. We will have that lesson in a few. Fact number four is that all languages in Swahili have prefix key. In fact, that's why you've probably seen Swahili, Kiswahili. You wonder what's the difference. It's because every language in Kiswahili has to have the key prefix. All right, just a few examples. Swahili is Kiswahili. This is what we are calling the key prefix. All right, Kizulu. Guess what the language this is? This is the Zulu language, Kizulu. The key tells me that that's a language. Kiingereza. Any idea what these languages are? Kiingereza, that's English. Kifaransa, that's the French language. So every language in Swahili has to have the key prefix, all right? Now, as we get started, I'd like us to briefly talk about the history of Swahili. It's important to know, how did Swahili begin? How did it spread? All right? So that's what I'd like us to look at for just a few minutes. Now, it's important to note that the word Swahili is actually derived from an Arabic word, sawahil, which means coasts, all right? So that's the meaning of the word Swahili. So Kiswahili is a coastal language. Now, let's move on to the next point. How did Swahili spread? Because originally, Swahili was spoken on the East African coast from southern Somalia all the way to northern Mozambique. That's where Swahili was originally spoken. But how did it spread to as far as parts of Central Africa in the Democratic Republic of Congo? Well, there are many reasons and factors that led to the spread of the Swahili language. But for now, I'll only mention three. So 3 factors. Number 1, trade. It played a huge role in the spread of Swahili language. So Swahili was the language of trade. Many merchants would come from Oman, Yemen, Persia, all right? And they would come to trade in East Africa, okay? Now, Swahili became the language of trade. In fact, we have a few words from Arabic in the Swahili language, which actually show that indeed Swahili played a huge role. Trade played a huge role in enhancing the Swahili language. A word such as biashara, you know, that in itself is from Arabic and it means business, all right? It means business. So trade played a huge role. So the merchants would come. The language of trade was Kiswahili. These businessmen started moving inland towards Central Africa, and they interacted with many other communities and ethnic communities, and the language of trade was Swahili. I can explain a lot about that, but we don't have time. Factor number 2 is what we call religion. So religion also played a huge role in spreading the language. Okay, so Christian missionaries, they came, and everywhere they went in East Africa, they would build a hospital, a school, and a church. So the new converts to Christianity would be taught the Bible. They would actually read the Bible in Swahili. Sermons were mostly done in Swahili. So Swahili became the preferred language in church and amongst the missionaries and in education. Same case applies to Islam. So everywhere the Muslims went, they also established some Muslim schools known as the madrasa. And the new converts to Islam were taught Islam and the Quran in Arabic, but also in Swahili. So that's how Swahili spread. The third factor is colonization. It also played a role in spreading the Swahili language. Okay, how? I'll just give one point. You know, Swahili has got quite a number of dialects. In Kenya, we have the Kiamu dialect, which is spoken in Lamu. Kiunguja is spoken in Zanzibar, sorry. Kimvita, which is spoken in Mombasa. And we have many other dialects, all right? Now, somewhere in the 20s and 30s, in the 1920s and 1930s, there was need to standardize Swahili, okay? Probably because of printing purposes or easier communication. Okay, so a task force was put in place to standardize Swahili, and one dialect was picked, and that dialect is what we call the Kiunguja dialect, which is nowadays spoken in Zanzibar, but now it's spoken everywhere in East and Central Africa. Okay, so the government of the day, the colonial governments, encouraged the use of Swahili in signing of treaties, in education, in many government businesses. Things were done in Swahili language. Now, those are just a few factors that led to the spread of the Swahili language. Now, you are seated there and you are wondering, why should I learn Swahili? Well, if you want to visit East Africa, all right, for tourism purposes, or you want to work, some volunteer work, missionary work, I think Swahili would be a very useful language to learn because you'll be able to communicate with many, many people. And we use Swahili here for our everyday activities, all right? Work, entertainment, music, commercials. A lot of things are usually done in the Swahili language, okay? If you go to the church or to the mosque, the sermon is likely to be delivered in Swahili. So Swahili is such a huge language in East and Central Africa if you want to interact with the locals. Now, you may also wonder, what other reason? Why should I learn Swahili? Well, this is another reason I would say. You've probably learned languages from other continents, yeah? But you want to learn a different language, a totally different language in terms of structure, in terms of vocabulary. I think Swahili is an excellent choice because this is the most widely spoken African language. So why not give it a shot? Try learning Swahili. It's a beautiful language, I assure you, and that's why I'm here to just guide you through. So allow me to end at that point, but in lesson 2, you don't want to miss this one because lesson 2 is the foundation. It's that key that you need in learning Swahili, and lesson 2 is about pronunciation. So that's what we will learn in lesson 2. I'd like to encourage you to please have a kitabu book and a kalamu pen so that now we get started. So see you in lesson 2, which is pronunciation. Kwaheri, bye bye.